This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law. Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey y'all, I'm Molly.
Hey, I'm Pam.
And welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. We would love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a suggestion about a case you'd like to hear. Today's episode is called Crime Collage, from Jealous Brothers to Wonky Surgeons. And really, y'all, it's everything in between, too. We are just touching on a lot of cases that we've been following right here on the Gulf Coast, as well as some that are breaking all across the country. So from the operating room to locker room, from au pairs to coaches, there's just a smorgasbord of crime going on right now.
Definitely.
I'm not even sure I said smorgasbord right, really.
I think you did. We'll go with that.
It's a buffet.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, let's start with some of our homegrown cases. You know, we talked recently about Pam's nephew, Brandon Aydelott. He had his regular, it's every 6 months, but actually now they're starting to space them a little further apart, but it was his competency evaluation. And sure enough, just like last time, the Department of Children and Families recommended that he be released to an even less restrictive group home that is part of this Appalachia Center program. So they want to move him from one facility in one county to a different facility that is basically allows you to come and go. He'll still have to sign in and sign out to go if they follow the rules. But at any rate, the state of Florida pushed back and said, no, we don't really want him to go to that. He broke the rules last time. He had a vape pen, marijuana, which is contraband, especially to mentally ill patients, because it can mess with their medication. It can mess with the way that they think. But he had somehow got a hold of this contraband. And so that's what kept him from being moved to this other facility 6 months ago, or even longer than back in July. And so now they reevaluated and they said that he had been on his P's and Q's, that he hadn't violated again. And even though the state said we would prefer him not to be moved, the judge went ahead and decided to let him go. But Pam got up there and spoke. We also heard for the first time from Randy Aydelott, Brandon's dad. We also heard from Elizabeth Aydelott, his younger sister. And we had heard from her before, but the two of them together were interesting.
Yes, definitely. They said that they wanted him to be able to get out because my niece, Elizabeth, we hadn't seen her in a long, long time. She's just a girl still.
She's 21 now?
She was 10 years old when her mom was killed. So, and now she's got a little baby too. But basically, you could tell she's a child.
Oh,
she's
definitely.
up there. She's like, I just want my brother out because we want to have fun and we want to hang out and we want to make memories. Well, her mother, who happens to be my sister, I would just like her to be out to be able to breathe and raise Elizabeth and raise Brandon. I mean, Sharon was afraid for her life before all this, even in her writing has it. And then when I go up there, I sometimes get this feeling like, well, we don't necessarily want to hear from you. We're trying everything we can to get this defendant moved on. And actually, I've kind of gotten bolder about it because I don't give a damn what you want to hear or not hear. I want my sister here. And that's why I hold on to Marcy's Law so hard, because our system has been defendant-philic, meaning love and defendant so much, and forget about victims' rights. So I think what they do, I think they're card-carrying afraid that the defendant's going to file a suit against them. I can make them a promise. I will too.
Right.
As a victim.
I hear you. I was surprised, too, that just listening to Elizabeth Aydelott's voice, when she spoke before, there was an edge to her, and it was almost like she had been coached this time. And it was very much a little girl's voice. And on some level, that's what really struck me, as I thought, this young woman may or may not have had maybe some of the love and care that she really needed on some deeper levels after her mom was killed. That was just a gut instinct from a 52-year-old woman with a 14-year-old daughter. I felt like that was very much a little girl almost in some ways that we were watching up there. But at the same time, it also felt very rehearsed and practiced. And it was still very subtly minimizing of Sharon and elevating of Sharon, her mother's killer, her brother.
Yeah. And at one point, the judge said, we all know how she died. And that hit me so hard. I did not appreciate that.
It hit me hard, too. I didn't really like that. I felt like that was that was a shot at you for bringing it all up again.
It was, because I brought it up again. And I also said the last time I was there that Brandon and the counselor sat there and they giggled and smirked and laughed. And I told him, I feel like I'm in a cafeteria or at the Giggle Fest or I'm at a casino. I'm not willing to take a chance. And so I'm going to say what I want to. People walk around and go, we don't want to make the judge mad. Who cares? You're a judge and you're not even making the decision. You're letting the Department of Children and Family, who wouldn't quit eating veggie straws during the previous time. I just think it's time to hunker down and go, if you wouldn't put him living next door to you, that's the only criteria that you need to go by.
Right. And I understand that the judge is in a tough spot. You know, they always fall back on they need to follow the law. And he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So that means in the eyes of the law, he is not a convicted criminal. He is a killer, though. He has been recognized as being responsible for Sharon Aydelott's homicide, just not responsible from a perspective of intent.
Yeah.
So I get it. And he's basically saying if he's following the rules, in the eyes of the law, he's innocent and I can send him along. But at the same time, you also have the discretion to say, hey, it's about more than just following the rules. It's also about the impact that this continues to have on the family, on him, on the community that he could potentially come back to. And I think, to your point, you feel like there was so much that happened even before he killed Sharon. There was so much that happened that indicated unprofessionalism and a lack of just awareness on the part of the professionals, quote unquote, who were supposed to be helping him, that makes you question the decision even at this point for him to move this far along in the process. And the court, whether they intend to or not, they basically just like, well, it's the law. We get to do what we want. Why are you griping about it? And that's the way it comes across.
Well, I'm going to gripe about it because the thing is, Bill Eddins told us a lie straight out of the gate.
The previous state attorney, yes.
Right, previous state attorney. And I've not dealt with murder before, ever.
Right.
And have a murderer and a murdered.
And you have to mention what happened to Sharon because it's actually why Brandon's there. And even if everybody knows it, nobody would be there talking about it but for those actions.
Right.
And to not talk about them anymore basically takes the power away from the horrificness of the action, the incident, and the outcome, the fallout from what you've been through. If you stop talking about it, then all of a sudden it minimizes it to me and succeeds, just like, in my opinion, the dad and the daughter were trying to do. Well, that was in the past. Why go there? Why talk about the knife that was buried in her eye and we had to use orthopedic surgical tools to remove it? Why talk about the fact that he had to go get replacement knives from the kitchen when he broke off a blade in her eye socket and broke off one in the tip of her skull? Why talk about the fact that he went back for that bat? Why bother? Why talk about the fact that Randy Aydelott was late bringing Elizabeth Aydelott back and that they found the body just moments after Brandon left the neighborhood? There's just so much to it. And from the family's perspective on her side, it's like, y'all, this is not simple. Sure, he may have been found not guilty by reason of insanity, but in our eyes, the pain is still the same, the crime is still fresh, and you're just signing off as if it didn't matter. And that's the way it comes across to me.
Yeah, it did to me too. And I'm always so weak and tired after that because it's been months writing this. Sharon mattered to me. She mattered to our whole family. Brandon still has zero remorse. He still said he's not through killing my family. He still said people with brown eyes. He still said he's got a hit list. He still said that he wished or don't know why he didn't go ahead and kill Biz back then. And then for someone to say, we all know how she died. My sister has a name. Her name's Sharon Lynn Hill Aydelott. And we do not know how she died. We know how she was savagely killed. And he is a killer. And I will say he's a killer. He admitted it. My thing for people is never, never, never let anybody do that insanity thing until we get it changed, get that law changed.
Or if you can push back against it,
I tell people I'd raise all kind of hell if I'd have known that. And also my other mistake was I wish I'd have told this horrible story out loud as hard as I could in the beginning, because people have a tendency to sanitize it like, well, he just shot her. That's terrible too. And as we're doing these kind of things, I have 11 mommy killers for us to do. There's that many cases that have just happened in the past 2 years.
Well, and I think a good case that is an example of what you're talking about getting your narrative out there and just beating it like a drum, good, bad, or otherwise, is the Karen Reed trial. I feel like that's what she did in an excellent sort of way. I don't know, our viewers, our audience, what their opinion is on Karen Reed. I don't even know that I have an opinion on whether or not she really did it. She was found not guilty in the eyes of the law. Part of me thinks she definitely did it. But I feel like the way she carried herself, just pushing back on anything and everything and questioning the motives of everyone, and whether it was the police or the neighbors or whatever, about accusing her, and not taking her account and believing it wholeheartedly. She did a great job of just creating that reasonable doubt. And you weren't really trying to create reasonable doubt. You were trying to let the system do its job, knowing everything that had been going on in Brandon and his life and Randy's life and the family's life before this even happened. And I think that if people had been aware of that, just like Karen Reed was letting everybody know what was going on, then perhaps it could have gone a different direction.
Right. Well, and I'm so tired of victims having to beg for justice, beg to be treated properly, beg to be treated with dignity. If you're afraid to make a decision, do not be a judge. Because the day I'd let DCF decide anything is the day I'd say, because DCF, same people I told you was giggling and laughing and eating veggie straws, can't seem to show up, and they can't make a good decision hardly on anything.
Yes. So to wrap that up, Brandon Aydelott will have another competency hearing. He was granted release to this less restrictive facility. He'll be headed over there that way, and then in 9 months, he will have another competency evaluation hearing, and we'll see how he's doing then. But the court made it clear that ultimately the goal is to release him back into the community.
And I'm making it clear that I don't think he needs to be.
Exactly. So the same day that Pam and I were there at the Santa Rosa County Courthouse covering Brandon Aydelott's hearing, we were also there covering Sean Perdue. You may remember that if you haven't seen it, we've done another episode on Sean Perdue's case. He is a man from Santa Rosa County, right here where we are recording here on the Gulf Coast. It's a bedroom community, a county right next door to Pensacola. And Sean grew up in this area. If you haven't caught the episode that we did on it, it's basically about him getting shot in the throat by his then wife. They're now divorced. But we've had other people that came forward and said that Stephanie Perdue did the same sort of shenanigans with them, just this love bombing, get swept up in this relationship. They end up in a relationship with her, and then pretty quickly she just turns mean, in their opinion, hateful, messing with their minds, if you will, saying one thing, doing something else, being happy one minute, screaming, crying the next, blaming them for all her problems, becoming more and more violent, definitely an obsession with money and trying to do the right thing. And anyway, y'all, this story is crazy. It really is a made-for-TV movie. We've not even really begun to scratch the surface. But if you want to check out this other episode on the Sean and Stephanie Perdue case, you won't want to miss it. It's here on our Gulf Coast Confidential channel as well. But at any rate, so Sean had a hearing, or Stephanie Perdue had a hearing, and Sean was there the same day that we were there covering the Brandon Aydelott trial. And essentially, the state was asking the court to say, hey, Stephanie Perdue is facing 2 crimes, but it's all kind of connected to the same motive. And this is what the state was arguing before the judge. The 2 crimes that Stephanie is facing is one for shooting Sean in the throat, and that was basically an aggravated battery crime charge that she faced. Then she was put into jail. She bonded out. She violated that bond and was back in jail. And while she was back in jail, that's when detectives say that she tried to solicit at least 2 inmates called confidential informants, essentially, because they went to deputies and they said, hey, this lady in the jail is trying to get us to kill her husband, and I don't agree with this, and we just wanted to let you know what was going on. So they allow her to think that she is plotting this, and the whole time these confidential informants are reporting back to these officers. And in a nutshell, they allow Stephanie Perdue to think that this hit on her husband actually went through. She worked with another lover at the time who has since died in jail as well, that was charged with conspiracy, is what Stephanie and her boyfriend were charged with, for trying to hire these inmates to kill Sean. And then they let her know, hey, you think you killed him, but he's actually alive. And then she was like, oh, I'm so relieved. Oh, fancy that. But before she knew he was alive, she had called her mother, and it's like, I get everything now. I get the house. I get the money. You know, he can't testify against me because I shot him in the throat. I get to get out of jail. He's the only reason that I'm here. And then they came forward and they were like, but actually he's alive. And she was like, oh, I'm so relieved, you know?
Not really.
Right. So the hearing, and that's a lot of setup to basically say that the hearing that we attended was the state saying, I want to use some evidence from the incident where she allegedly shot him in the throat and use that in my conspiracy trial, because that goes to show the motive as to why she wanted him dead. She didn't want her husband around. Apparently she didn't want him around even before that, but she certainly, you know, for whatever, that's the state's case, is that it's greed is the alleged motive, but that she definitely didn't want him around to testify against her, so that she hired these inmates allegedly to try to kill him to prevent that from happening. So it was a really interesting update, but then along this, I got yelled at twice.
You got called out.
Man.
No, ma'am. No,
Twice.
ma'am.
So for those folks who aren't familiar, you know, Florida's got these great sunshine laws, you know, government and sunshine, if you will. And so you're allowed as a member of the press to cover these public hearings and to take pictures, but you have to get permission from courts, you know, administration first. So it's usually like an email or a call a day or two in advance, or however long in advance. And you just say, hey, I'm Molly Barrows with Gulf Coast Confidential or XYZ, and I'm going to be coming with or without a photographer. And if there's a photographer, then, you know, obviously the insinuation is that they're going to be taking pictures. And if I tell them it's just me, my photographer can't come, I will be taking pictures on my phone. And they're like, okay. So then court administration sends an email to court security and the judge to make sure that everybody's okay with me being there, or whoever, this member of the media. I had done all that. I had been cleared. The email had been sent. But beginning at Brandon Aydelott's hearing, I stand up to take pictures, and some blonde lady comes racing over, and she's like, you need to sit down. You need to sit down. You need to sit down. And I was like, I have permission to be here. I have permission to be here. And she was like, well, next time tell us. Which is, by the way, y'all, bull crap.
You already told them.
Right. I did everything I was supposed to do. I let them know. I don't have to come and scrape and bow to make sure you read your email.
Right.
Again, no disrespect. They have a job to do. I get that they see people on the worst day of their life all the time, but don't make your job the worst day of my life.
That's right.
You know, and which has been way worse than that. But I'm just saying, like, that was a little ridiculous. So that was the first time. Fast forward to later in the afternoon, we're back there covering Sean Perdue's ex-wife's hearing, Stephanie Perdue, and Stephanie has been brought in, and I'm trying to get a picture of her because she's sitting across the room, and just the way the angles are and people standing in front, I'd been having a difficult time getting a picture of her where people could really see her face. So I thought, well, when she moves from the bench where they're just keeping her while she's waiting for her case to be called, to when they move her up to sit next to her attorney at a table that's right there, right in front of the judge. And then I have a better shot of getting her face. So this is my plan, right? I'm waiting for them. We sat through another hearing, listened to this other case that came up before hers. I tried to get some pictures. They're a little bit blurry of her because of just the angle. So I'm like, okay, well, here it is. It's time. They call her case. She's walking up to go up there. I stand up to get pictures. Some man in a uniform comes up like his arse is on fire. And he was like, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. And my heart stopped. I didn't know he was talking to me. The whole courtroom went quiet. The judge went pale. Yeah. He looked as though all the blood drained from his face. And this dude, man, he thought he was just really onto a hardened criminal, I guess. He was like, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I'm like, I literally thought I was going to pee myself. I was like, what are you talking to me? I was like, I have permission to be here, like in front of everyone. And I've been doing this a long time.
Know, right?
You don't always rattle me, but like I literally went to sit down and I could feel my hand shaking. I'm like, for God's sake, Santa Rosa, do y'all not read your email?
It was something. Stella told me, my friend was sitting by me, and she said, she calls you my daughter. She said, your daughter just got in trouble.
I know. Well, and then Judge Drake was like, wait. Yeah. She's allowed. She did everything right. And then he starts telling me like, well, you know, other media come in with cameras. I'm like, dude, I was on Channel 3, which is our local ABC affiliate for nearly 20 years.
You got to bring this camera.
Right. Lots of people still around here recognize me. Lots of people don't. I don't count on that when I go to cover something. I count on people being professional and doing their jobs, which means reading your emails. I can tolerate one or mistake or
No,
so.
ma'am.
And
No,
I
ma'am.
make plenty of mistakes, but it was just the attitude of both of them.
It was
You know what I
something.
mean? I respect law enforcement. I would not want to do that job. Nothing but love. But like that unprofessional behavior. And the judge looked like he was a nervous wreck. And he was like, well, normally, they come in and the reporter will have somebody with a camera. I'm like, yeah, been there, done that for 20 years, man. We have moved on. Not everybody shows up with a cameraman anymore. It's all right here on the phone. Do I need to get a picture? Like, and then anyway, and I get it. Like, it's great. But I don't know. I just think sometimes people just want a reason to take out their unhappiness on others. And the media makes for an easy, soft target on occasion.
Definitely. That's time for wine bar.
Right, exactly. But anyway, at least we got the pictures, we got the stories covered, and those are some of our local homegrown cases that we wanted to share. But another fun fact that actually came up in the Stephanie Perdue hearing, they decided, because this is actually one of the longest outstanding criminal cases on the docket in Santa Rosa County. So the judge recognized that. He's trying to move it along. Because Sean Perdue, he was there as well. He's like, I just want an end to this. It's hard for me to move on with my life. He is dating somebody else. I was happy to hear that. He seems happy. He's got a good relationship with his daughter, who he lost custody of because of this whole trauma of everything that he went through. For health and emotional reasons, he decided it would be best to give her up for adoption. He has a special needs daughter who's 15, and he gave her up for adoption to the nurse. But he still sees her and talks to her regularly. So all of that's moving forward and happy. But, just this outstanding criminal case, he wants to see Stephanie put away. So the judge was going to set a date for that to be heard, a tentative trial date, and they chose like the week of May 4th. And they realized that was the same week that Dr. Ben Brown has his trial tentatively scheduled. And if you've followed our podcasting, you know that we broke the Dr. Ben Brown story right here on Gulf Coast Confidential a couple of years ago now, but we continue to follow it. He's been charged with negligent manslaughter in the death of his wife, Hillary Brown, who went into cardiac arrest while he was performing several procedures on her in his Gulf Breeze area office after hours, basically around the holidays. They'd closed the office to clients, and he was doing some work on her. According to the Department of Health and Santa Rosa Sheriff's investigators, it appears that she had adverse reaction to the lidocaine, which is basically a numbing agent that he was using. And instead of stopping, he continued. And then when she had a grand mal seizure, he didn't call 911 right away. He didn't start performing CPR right away or allow his staff to do it. And he didn't have life-saving equipment on hand. So this is the reason why he's facing this negligent manslaughter charge. And they've been, pushing back and delaying this trial for some time. And the judge back in the fall said, no, we have to move forward on this. We're going to set it in May. And I really mean it this time. You guys need to really be aiming for this. And sure enough, when they went to go set Stephanie Perdue's trial for May 4th, and they were like, well, this is going to conflict with the Ben Brown trial, state prosecutor stepped up and said, I have a feeling we won't be ready for trial, or they may not be ready for trial as well, because we haven't even started to depose expert witnesses yet. Oh, wow. So in that respect, just wanted to give you an update there. Ben Brown looks like that has a possibility anyway of being continued.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Well, we got a case sort of like that that's in Georgia. The lady Doris Jordan.
Yes,
that lady.
I saw that.
Yeah, she's 47 years old, and she went to get some liposuction and a BBL, Brazilian butt lift.
Yeah.
Okay, this was in Georgia, and there's it's not a clinic that's not owned by a doctor, and the man that owns that clinic had another clinic at the other end of the strip center there called Butts Gone Wild. So I mean, if that tells you anything. But she went in there for that, and it's not just a little tiny Clinique or Sephora makeover. They say those BBLs are the most dangerous ones of any of the plastic surgery.
Right. And not to go back to Ben Brown, but, we saw the Department of Health investigate complaints of patients that I interviewed who claimed that he had given them unauthorized BBLs, that they woke up and said, my God, I've got extra fat in my hips. Because, and if you're not familiar with what a Brazilian butt lift is, basically there are dips or divots in your hips that as you get older, you don't have that little round heart-shaped bottom as much. When you're getting older, your body's like, listen, childbearing is not as important. Just keep it moving. You're upright. You're healthy. That's enough. Yeah. But some folks want to get that little round, youthful bottom again. So they aim for those BBLs. And that was what, at any rate, if you want to check out those episodes, you certainly can. Yeah. But Ben Brown denies all of these allegations and said they did want these BBLs. But that was a big point of contention with a couple of patients. They said, no, we didn't agree to it. And even though you suddenly miraculously appeared with these waivers that we allegedly signed that we don't remember signing as you were giving us our meds to go off into surgery.
That's not the time.
At any rate, that was the BBL thing. That was when I first started learning about what they even were and how dangerous they actually were.
Yeah, we've learned a lot of stuff, haven't we, that we never thought we would know. But at this clinic, where Miss Jordan was at, and she was a nurse also, at this clinic, they didn't take insurance and everything was quick. They were kind of away. It reminds me of where Ben Brown's Restore plastic surgery was there. And also what happened was she started going into distress. And so what they found out, they ran out of anesthesia. Sounds familiar, like Ben Brown. And she was having a hard time breathing, and her pulse and everything like that was thready and not strong. So they take the oxygen and follow it down here, and they go, this isn't even connected to anything. It is an open end of the tube there.
Like playing doctor.
Right. Then they look around and go, there's no oxygen in the place. I mean, this all sounds just like what happened with Ben Brown.
Playing fast and loose with the rules.
Definitely.
Yes, allegations.
So and this happened in 2019. So these cases take forever because it was just on the 26th that a judge awarded her family $52 million, but they'll never see a cent of it because this place was not insured. And the doctor that was there, her name is Kanye Willis, and she settled personally with them. And one of the videos I was looking at, one of the reporters like you called and said, do you have anything to say? And she said, not at this time. So the reporter there, he said, I'm going to keep asking to have something to say. But so that $52 million, they'll never see it. And they want their mommy back or their wife back or, I think she was a vet too. But people have to check to see, are these places insured? What happens when there's an emergency? Like when I had my knee, that little thing done on my nerve on my leg, I said, if something emergent happens, where do we go?
Well, and are you licensed to perform those kinds of procedures there? Because there's a difference between a surgical center and an outpatient type facility, and those nuances matter. And I think people who want this work done and they find somebody that seems legit, or maybe word of mouth they've been told they are legit, they get there and they're like, gosh, they're going to, especially with plastic surgery, a lot of it is a cash only business. Now, insurance will cover some of it. For example, breast cancer patients who maybe need reconstructive surgery or need to have breast implants removed or replaced for health reasons, that can get covered by insurance. But to a great extent, a lot of it is not.
Right.
So they find somebody who will give them cut them a break on the cash part of it, if you will, and they don't even know to ask.
Right.
I mean, it's like me taking my car to the mechanic shop. Yeah. They can tell me whatever. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel that way about my own body. I go to the doctor. I'm like, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. Well, here, have some B12 or here, take some sinus medication. But, you can have a feeling about what's wrong, but somebody who's a trained professional, you count on them to be honest with you. And those same issues came up with the Ben Brown case too. And not just Ben Brown, but also with other doctors' cases that we've been following. And actually, let's take a moment to pause right here along those lines and thank Joe Zarzar of Zarzar Law for his support of Gulf Coast Confidential. We really appreciate him, and he's a fighter as well for victims who've been hurt through no fault of their own. And he is handling a case against a Dr. Thomas Shiknowski of Ascension Sacred Heart over in Destin area. He is accused of basically mistakenly removing a man's liver instead of his spleen and causing him to bleed out on the operating table. And in digging in, he discovered another doctor, basically an orthopedic surgeon over in the Jacksonville area, who is literally facing hundreds of lawsuits for medical issues that he has had that were causing him to make mistake after mistake, putting in knee replacements in backwards, causing injuries so severe that people are permanently crippled. Some have even died. And yet he was allowed to continue practicing. Essentially, Joe Zarzar, his claims are because there was more money to be made in allowing him to practice than there was in any money that they could potentially lose in these lawsuits. So that being said, in the state of Florida, I have learned a lot. To your point about what happened with this particular lady who died when they didn't have the machine properly set up, they weren't insured. Many, many patients stepped forward after Hillary Brown died and said, hey, Dr. Brown didn't do me right. Here's this and here's why I think that. And again, he denies all of this and says that he's on the up and up. But he had the minimum level of medical malpractice insurance, $250,000. And then he also worked with another group called North Florida Surgeons. It basically provided a lot of the HR, the office management, and he blames them, but he says that his patients had to sign a form that they provided, which for all intents and purposes is an arbitration agreement. And the Florida Supreme Court ruled that those arbitration agreements are illegal in the state of Florida because you're erasing a patient's ability for a jury trial in the event that something wrong happens and goes bad and that they're hurt through no fault of their own, just like Joe Zarzar represents victims like that. So again, thank you, Joe Zarzar, for being a supporter of Gulf Coast Confidential and standing up for those who can't speak up for themselves, because that's what we try to do right here on Gulf Coast Confidential. But those were some of the issues that came up when I was digging into the Ben Brown, even following up on Dr. Thomas Shiknowski. But with Ben Brown, he kept the minimum level of medical malpractice insurance, which is only $250,000. So a lot of personal injury attorneys were not necessarily inclined to go after the case because there was no financial incentives. And if the state of Florida doesn't hold him accountable as a victim, if you will, that's your only option. So if they remove that incentive for a personal injury attorney to take on your case, then you're kind of screwed. And that's essentially what a lot of families have said, that and this arbitration agreement that they title something else, but it basically means that you have to sit down and talk with the office and the group about what the potential outcome could be to resolve your case instead of having a jury of your peers decide whether or not that they were wrong.
Right. And that's kind of what Miss Jordan went through too. The state of Georgia, and we better keep our eyes on this one. There is a court hearing and to coming up that they want to just have to have $350,000 as a minimum insurance. And if that happens, $250,000 sounds like a lot of money. Okay?
But it's not if you can never work again.
Right. If you got 30 more years of your life that you've been maimed or you can't work again, we should be able to go in there.
Or if you die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See, that's...
and you've taken away somebody's ability to provide for their family.
And their enjoyment of their loved one and stuff and just growing up and what have you. But I think looking at that, I know people go into medicine to help. Most of us do. But what I think about, and I've been saying it from the beginning with Ben Brown, my heart goes exactly out to those nurses and ancillary personnel like the techs and the surgeon's assistants and the people that are in there. If one
Definitely
person,
Dr. Shignovsky for sure in that surgical room.
Right. You got one person in there that's so tyrannical and stuff that they didn't, I mean, he would have blown their hair back if one of them did say, hey, that's the effing liver.
Right. When he took the liver out and said, that's the spleen, labeled as a spleen. And one of the techs said, or one of the staff members that was there in the operating room said, that's the fucking liver. Pardon my
Well, that's
French.
what they said.
Yes, but that is
the quotes there.
Quote unquote.
Well, it's just like this with this lady in Georgia. They waited 19 minutes before they called 911. I think we ought to just get something clear right now. When stuff starts going south and you're not an expert at CPR or any of that stuff, and
protect your patient, don't cover your ass.
911
right.
is call it. That's the best thing you can do. We've got Good Samaritan laws and stuff that will protect you. Even those of us in healthcare, I'd rather just go ahead and take that chance and call 911, not sit there 19 minutes. After 2 or 3 minutes, our brains are not going to function properly.
Why Hillary Brown had to be taken off life support after a week. There was no brain activity.
And so when I read this case about Georgia, I thought it's going to happen sooner than later. We're going to have all these states basically holding it at less than $500,000. And we can't let that be because, you know, doctors are smart and good and everything, but they don't get to be haphazard and stuff. And I know from being in pharmacy, there's sometimes big corporations go, throw the dice and go, cost of doing business is understaffed.
100%. Like if they find a flaw in a car, they find a flaw in a product, a good bit of the time they weigh, you know, but basically what's the death ratio? How much am I going to have to pay out when this mistake impacts somebody with either death or an injury, you know, and is it worth how much I'll make for all the profit when it doesn't go wrong? Right.
It's not to us because that's the loss of a human, but to them, it's the cost of doing business. And I get so frustrated with that with any health care.
We saw that with the opioid crisis.
Oh, yeah. And we'll see it again because other stuff pops up too. We cannot say, let's see how if we need 12 people to operate the pharmacy, why do you give us 9? That is waiting for something to happen. And pharmacists are basically, I know in my profession, going home, they're not functioning well anymore, just depressed, the things we try to teach people to be healthy and stuff. But we cannot keep doing that where the cost of doing business is people's sanity and their life. It's just not that.
Right.
The fat cat over here that you've given a lot of money to, and I think that's where Luigi's passion came from, because he was set in life as far as personally. But you look at this and go, this is not right.
Did you see where somebody tried to bust him out of jail?
I didn't see that.
They impersonated an FBI agent and tried to basically remove him, and then they got busted. I know,
no.
eventually this is going to be a crazy book for sure.
Definitely. Well, I heard where before they were going to do Luigi the musical.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah, that was bad.
That seems like in poor taste.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Interesting. Oh my. Well, those are some good local cases. And then we have the one in Georgia. So moving on from surgical crimes, if you will, to now au pair crimes. These are always kind of titillating.
I know. Well, and au pair, we don't have those. We got like a babysitter, a nanny, grandmother, aunts, uncles, whatever. But the au pair, I looked up what that meant, and it says on par, that they're on par with each other. So it's like a family member. It's usually someone from another country, and they're over here probably for education, but their pay is a stipend and then living there and their food and stuff like that.
And we're talking about the case of Brendan Banfield and his wife, Christy. So Christy is the victim in this case, and Brendan and his on par were on par, apparently, in ways they probably should have been.
This is a big old catfish case. Christine and Brendan are married, and the au pair comes in, and then Brendan decides he's going to sleep with her. So, okay, that's like that hadn't been done before. So what he does, this is what allegedly he and the au pair do, is basically go on a fetish website, BDSM type of thing, and they act like they're Christine, and they put an ad, and I even hate saying this because it's so terrible, but what they do is put an ad on there that says, I have a rape fantasy. Ugh. And bring a knife, and et cetera, et cetera. And this man's name is Joe Ryan. So the morning of that they had planned this, there's a lot of things going on. And I want to kind of leave this for us to finish the whole thing. But keep in mind, this is about fetishes, catfishing, an au pair, another man that comes in to fulfill the fantasy that these two wrote. And the persons that end up dead are Christine and the man that comes in.
That's so interesting. And the au pair, Juliana Perez Magales, I believe. I think
Magalhães,
Brazilian. She is beautiful.
She is. Not now, though, because there's so many carbs in prison. We heard Donald Aydelott tell us that. Too many carbs in there.
We saw a little bit of that with Stephanie Perdue.
Yes, we did. Yeah, because I noticed that she was a bigger girl then, and she had a lot of hair, though, so she's getting protein somewhere.
Oh my goodness, that's true. Well, I guess that's the upside.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got all this hedonistic stuff going on. Just FYI, Brendan is an IRS agent that's allowed to carry, so he does criminal investigations, I guess, with the IRS. So it's a hot mess. We're going to put it all together and tell folks the rest of it.
Well, I am looking forward to diving into that au pair story. That is so interesting, especially a gun-toting IRS guy.
Well, he's on the stand right now. And this case is, I've brought people up to how far they are, so we'll let people know maybe a couple of weeks.
Okay, looking forward to it. And we've also been following a lot of cases involving coaches, locally as well as nationally. But let's check in on the Charles Hamrick case.
Okay, yeah, that was an old one. I just brought it up here because it just fits with all the things that are coming up, like at Gulf Breeze with the McChesney, and people having to look at this stuff and go, this isn't right. We can't just keep letting people do the lemon dance and move to another school. So Charlie Hamrick, he was a coach at Tate, and he also was like a youth leader at a church over there in that area, over near where I live in that area. And he was a good guy for all intents and purposes, but he would get too hands-on with the boys. He even at one point was doing the physicals for the student athletes, including touching their genitalia.
Oh, gosh. Shades of Larry Nassar.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Sandusky, too, So it's just crazy on all this. But this goes back to 1984. That is about 40 years that this was going on.
Where was he?
He was at Tate most of the time.
So in the Pensacola area.
Yeah. And so I remember reading about this.
6 life sentences?
Yep, got 6 consecutive life sentences. And he was an assistant football coach, and he wasn't a teacher. He wasn't in the classroom. And see, that's what we're saying about some of these coaches. They're out here untethered, doing whatever they want to do. And I told you, if any of this stuff happens in a classroom, that teacher's gone.
Well, we think about that with August, and there was no allegations of sexual abuse, but August Borden up in Alabama, those coaches were right there when all of that happened, and they have all gotten into the huddle of silence to cover up what appears to be a brutal beating that really killed that 15-year-old.
Oh, yeah. The beatdown, the definite beatdown. Well, they said they terminated him in 2015. And
Hamrick?
Yeah, 2015. And that he, before that, had almost like a $1 million Ponzi scheme was something he had gotten in trouble before that. So I guess they're not checking into people's background. And that was one thing people were giving Malcolm Thomas a big old hard time about. And he had a little quote. It's like, he said, we're not necessarily looking into people's ongoing deep, dark secrets. Well, that's what we need you to look at.
Right. I think that's the whole point of vetting.
Yeah. So basically they came around with a new policy enforcement where they did look a little deeper in those. And basically, and we've heard this word before, it said the district has updated and clarified its hiring guidelines and its employee handbook to include more rigorous standards and moral turpitude and private conduct of gross immorality to be looked at.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, that came up in the McChesney case. We interviewed the parent that talked about how years before she had an unpleasant experience with Matt McChesney's mother, who was then at the time, she was basically another administrator at the elementary school, Gulf Breeze Elementary. And if you're not familiar with this, you should check out the episodes on the McChesney case so you could, understand in context what we're talking about. But essentially, he's a recent graduate of Gulf Breeze High School. He is under investigation for downloading some pretty atrocious porn that's related to children, including infants and very young children. So it's disturbing on many levels. He is, we're continuing to follow this. He's not been convicted of it, but his mother allowed him to participate in a annual tradition, which is a graduation walk of the seniors from the nearby high school walking through the elementary school, knowing that he had been under investigation just weeks before for downloading and uploading, according to investigators, some of these terrible images. So there's been a lot of pushback and concern within the community. And a mom approached me and she said, I've had run-ins with this particular woman before, Matt McChesney's mother, and I'm not pleased with how she handled it. And in a nutshell, there had been another teacher that was accused of touching this particular parent's daughter and other children. And he has since been convicted of that and sent to prison. But he had some sketchy reports on his behavior in his file. But to your point, the reason that he was still allowed to get a job there, according to this parent, because she was part of a lawsuit against the school district that they ended up settling over this, molestation, if you will. But they found that the reason that he was still allowed to be hired with this background that he had was because the company, a private contractor that the district hired to vet these teachers, basically was, I believe she said, understaffed. But there were some issues, whatever the reason was, they didn't properly do their job. And the district was in the process of, I think, cutting their contract or somehow cutting ties with this company. But that, to me, is indicative. It makes sense. Obviously, vetting is important.
Yes.
If you have to hire another company to do it for you, and if they mess that up, hopefully you've done your diligence and you hired the best company you thought you could. And if they screwed up, that's on them. But to excuse it, and Malcolm Thomas is from a different school district, a Scambia school district, but that sort of attitude of, I guess we need to look into their deep, dark secrets. Well, yeah, parents do want you to, because, people who are accused of doing bad things aren't going to wear it on their sleeve necessarily.
No.
You're going to have to dig for it.
And they're going to go to target-rich environments, and they're going to be, for lack of a better word, charming and fun and alluring and stuff. One of these, here with Charlie Hamrick, one mom and dad, they confronted him on it, and basically they said, well, we let it go because he said it's just a one-time thing. It's never a one-time thing, and we've heard that about, like, even with Randy Aydelott when he was at PHS. They basically were willing to do a shell game and move the girls somewhere else, and out loud said, we'll just squash it if it comes up here, and we'll say the girls are wrong. And that's what's going on in Tuscumbia. I mean, how in the world, it's a race to the bottom of not good people. I mean, you have to look at people and go, you are no damn good. If you're doing this to kids and think you're going to get away with it. And then another one of the victims, they were 8 to 11 years old, and the mother saw her boy sitting on his lap at something at Pensacola Beach.
That's disturbing.
Yeah, and she was mad. Then there's another time when they were out boating, a different young child. But we got to be careful letting these people close to our kids. And if they don't have the money to vet it, make the principals all get on some sort of rotation, and you three evaluate these now or whatever. There's a room for it. You know how mad I get about the way things are now. Staff your business, staff your organizations. If you have to pay more and make less profit, fine. These are people's lives and futures that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, we have covered a lot of ground on this episode.
Yeah, we have.
A lot of cases that we're continuing to follow, and I appreciate you digging into some of them. I didn't realize that Charlie Hamrick case was so heinous.
Yeah, and we're not through with it yet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into that one. I've got a special place in my heart for these people that want to go after kids. It's just horrible because the damage that it does is so lifelong.
Right. And boys and girls, coaches have such a place of reverence in our minds. It's not like reverence like, a spiritual
almost
thing,
like doctors. You expect them to have a certain level of decorum. People automatically, that position comes with some respect and expectation of honorability.
Right. And we listen to them. I remember playing sports. You listen. You don't necessarily do your own thinking. So we can't have these, not all the time, we can't have these people in here putting those thoughts in your head that that's okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, Pam, thank you so much for joining us today, and we appreciate you for joining us here on Gulf Coast Confidential. That's it for Crime Collage, from Jealous Brothers to Wonky Surgeons. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. Remember, you can listen to more episodes of Gulf Coast Confidential on our YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and we would love it if you would please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law.